600 cables lying on the floor of the ocean carry 99% of the internet. Most of them are about 20 millimeters thick, the width of a garden hose. Cut all 600 on the same morning, and the internet does not come back. Most people hear that and picture an inconvenience. No email, no streaming. A quieter world, maybe a better one, where people finally talk to each other again. That picture lasts about 90 minutes. The cables break all the time, around 200 faults a year, from anchors, fishing nets, underwater landslides. Roughly 80% of the damage is caused by people who never knew the cable was down there. Almost nobody notices because the data reroutes around the break and arrives a few milliseconds late. The reroute is the only reason the ocean floor has never made the news. Take away the reroute, and there is nothing underneath it. Satellites carry a tiny fraction of this traffic, and were never built to carry the rest. The cloud is not a cloud. It is those hoses. And somewhere in the last 20 years, the internet stopped being a way to send messages and became something else. Almost nobody registered the moment it happened. What it holds up now has very little to do with talking. The first thing to fail is money, not the economy. Money itself. The physical act of paying for something. A card payment is not a transfer of money. It is a question. The terminal in the shop reads the card, then asks a computer somewhere else whether that money exists and whether it can be spent. The answer comes back in under a second, through a cable, and the shop hands over the goods. Nothing moved. A number in one database went down, and a number in another went up. That is all a payment has been for most of the money on Earth for years. Cut the cable, and the terminal has nothing to ask. It does not decline the card. It sits there, holding a question it cannot send. Within the first hour, every card reader on the planet is a plastic brick. Every ATM is a locked steel box that will not open, because it also has to ask permission before it opens. Every bank branch is a room full of people whose records are somewhere else. What remains is the cash already in circulation. Notes and coins, in tills and wallets and drawers. In a modern economy, that is a small fraction of the money that supposedly exists. The rest was never printed. It has no physical location. It is a number in a ledger, and the ledger is on the other side of a broken cable. By the end of the first day, the only wealth anyone can use is the wealth they happen to be carrying, and this part is survivable. People traded without banks for most of history. Cash, credit between neighbors, promises written on paper. It is slow and ugly, and it works. The next failure has no workaround. The food in a city is not stored in the city. There is a common belief that supermarkets keep warehouses out of sight somewhere, full of reserves. They mostly do not. The modern supply chain replaced storage with scheduling. Instead of holding stock, the system holds information. What sold yesterday? What will sell tomorrow? Which truck is where and what to load onto it tonight? The shelf is refilled just before it empties. Storage costs money. Timing is nearly free. Timing is nearly free because the data is nearly free. Take away the data, and there is no timing left. Only whatever is already on the shelf. Then look at where everything else is sitting. A container ship arrives at a port carrying thousands of identical steel boxes. Nothing on the outside of a container tells anyone what is inside it. The contents exist as a record, a manifest, a database entry that says this box holds medicine and that one holds shoes. The crane operator does not open boxes. He moves numbers. Break the database, and a port full of cargo becomes a stack of anonymous locked boxes. The medicine is still there. Nobody knows which box. Finding out means opening them by hand, one at a time, in a yard holding tens of thousands of them. And the trucks that would carry them out are waiting on dispatch systems that no longer dispatch. The food never vanishes. The knowledge of where the food is vanishes, which, for a city of 10 million people, is close to the same thing. Within a week, the shelves are empty. And it is not because the harvest failed. The harvest is fine. It is sitting in a silo in another country, and the system that knew it was there, and knew who needed it, and knew which ship to put it on, was made of light traveling through glass. The obvious response is to fix the cables. So look at what fixing them takes. There are about 60 cable repair ships in the entire world. 60. That is the whole fleet, for 1.5 million kilometers of cable across every ocean on Earth. Much of it is old, and the industry has spent decades building the network, and almost nothing on the ships that keep it alive. Now the precedent. On the 15th of January 2022, an underwater volcano erupted near Tonga. The blast tore apart the single fiber optic cable connecting the country to the rest of the world, and a nation of 105,000 people went dark in an instant. The nearest repair ship was in Port Moresby, more than 4,000 kilometers away. When the ship finally reached the fault, the crew found the eruption had not made a clean break. It had shredded a long stretch of cable into pieces. It took 38 days to bring Tonga back online. One cable, one country, now scale it. 600 cables cut everywhere at once. Even if every ship on Earth sailed immediately and worked without stopping, the arithmetic runs into years, and that assumes one tidy break per cable, which is not how cables break. But the ships would not sail immediately. A repair vessel has to be told where to go. It needs fault coordinates, spare cable, fuel, a port to load at, a crew to summon, and a company solvent enough to pay for it. Every one of those things ran on the thing that just broke. This is the trap underneath the whole scenario. Repairing the internet requires the internet, the manufacturing, the coordination, the ordering of parts, the movement of the ships. All of it lives inside the network that is gone. It is not that fixing it would be hard, it is that we would be trying to rebuild the network using a civilization that only functions while the network is up. That is what turns forever from a rule of the thought experiment into a consequence of it. But suppose it could be done. Suppose the ships sailed, the cables were spliced, and years later, the network came back. Much of what was on it would not come back with it, because the internet is already deleting itself. Right now. While it works perfectly. Researchers at the Pew Research Center went looking for web pages that existed in 2013 and found that 38% of them were simply gone a decade later. Not moved. Gone. A quarter of everything that appeared online between 2013 and 2023 was already unreachable by the end of that span. More than half of Wikipedia's articles contain at least one reference pointing to a page that no longer exists. That is with the power on, with the cables intact, with every company involved still in business and still trying. The internet is not an archive. It is a room where the lights only stay on while someone keeps paying for them, and things disappear from it every single day while the payments are still being made. If you have followed this far, past the cables and the ports and into the part almost nobody thinks about, then you already know this channel is not built for the comfortable version of a question. It is for the ones who want the whole chain all the way down. Subscribe and stay for the last piece, because there is one more turn, and it is the one that matters. The internet cannot be switched off. That is not a figure of speech. It was designed that way, deliberately, by a man who was thinking about a nuclear war. In 1964, a researcher at the Rand Corporation named Paul Baran published a series of reports called On Distributed Communications. His problem was specific and grim. Build a network that could still carry a message after a first strike had destroyed most of it. His answer was to delete the center. No headquarters, no master switch. Break every message into small blocks. Let each block find its own path across whatever nodes are still standing, and reassemble it at the far end. It worked. That idea became packet switching, and packet switching is the internet. The popular version of this story goes too far. The network that became the internet was built to share computers between research labs, not to fight a war, and the people who built it have said so plainly. But the idea underneath it, distributed routing with no center to strike, came out of Baran's work on surviving the end of the world. The immortality is real, and it was on purpose. And then we did something to it that Baran never designed for. We moved our memory into it. Not our messages, our memory. The records, the photographs, the science, the contracts, the maps, the languages, the archives that every previous generation kept on paper and handed forward half by accident. Here is what makes that different from everything humans have ever done before. A clay tablet needs nothing. Neither does a page. Every archive we have ever built could be read by anyone who simply found it. In a ruin, in a box, in a flooded basement 1,000 years later. They survive neglect. They ask nothing of us. The internet is the first record in human history that has to be running in order to exist. It is not a library. It is a performance. It exists only while it is playing. So the cables were never the fragile part. The fragile part is that a species with a permanent memory took that memory and moved it into a medium with no permanence at all, an unkillable network, which is not remotely the same thing as a lasting one. Cut the 600 hoses, and the internet does not go dark. It stops having ever existed. If this changed the way you hear the word cloud, leave a like. And tell me in the comments, if you had 1 week of warning and everything you keep online had to be reduced to what you could print and put in a box, what goes in the box?